I'm Dane Rose and want to invite a deep dive for those of you interested in a long-haul partnering relationship. I feel it's important that you have some sense of the tapestry and values and a sense of how they express themselves in my life. Defining objects, patterns. I've never lied to a friend, partner, or lover. One of the reasons for this is I believe that if we ultimately do care about one another and take the time to understand one another and know what love is, love being the facilitation of another person's journey to find security, survival, a sense of love and belonging, a sense of self-esteem, then if we are both partnering to support that agenda, there should be no necessity to lie. Lying means that we've taken a shortcut and haven't bothered to take the time to understand one another. Or we're confused about what love is. It's not necessarily possessiveness or lust. It is caring enough about another human being to see them on their path. Win-win through mutual transparency is my primary operating system. Again, if we understand what love is, if we understand that the greatest joy is to live in a world where other people are happy, then when we understand that there is no innate sense of scarcity, there becomes no basis for a systemic pattern of win-lose. My definition of intelligence is the optimal conversion of energy into sustainable well-being. An intelligent person, given 1,000 different options, will choose the option that creates the most sustainable well-being for the most people per unit of time, money, and natural resources invested. An unintelligent person probably doesn't have a definition of intelligence, but also is not accurately and scientifically measuring what does and doesn't produce different levels of sustainable well-being. These three traits and the way they intermingle with the fabric of my choices and history say more about me to me than any other 3 points that I know. Context for pain, loneliness, and fear. I have held the loneliness of terror, pain, unexpressed grief, and shame in my body since I first had words to speak. I feel concerned by the cultural patterns which shame and ignore and violate those most in need: children, the elderly, sexual abuse survivors, trauma survivors. The parts of me which I most desire to honor, love, and communicate within myself and to share with others are systematically avoided or undervalued in this culture. So Devang, my idea is to do the titles, such as homeschooling with the 100-year question, as white text using the happiness data font on a black background, and then to clip to my individual statements. Homeschooling with the 100-year question. To think forward, I believe that one of the most powerful questions we can ask ourselves in education is what skills will be the most valuable to humanity over the next 100 years? I used this question to choose several topics for my homeschooling curriculum, which I designed at age 14 and which were not included in either my public or Waldorf school education. Subjects included meditation, yoga, poetry. I wrote more than 5,000 poems. Grounded imagination, including system design, which will come up a bit later in this exploration. Sustainable horticulture and landscaping. Organic 20-minute cooking or chefing. I note that of the 15 adults I interviewed prior to leaving Waldorf school to design my own homeschool curriculum, 100% were against the idea. It's one of the best decisions I've made, and this plays a part in my outlook that if the majority is doing it, there has got to be a better way. If I was introducing myself or running happiness data the way a majority of people do or would do it, we would probably both be bored by now. System design and business success. System design and implementation is a talent that determines at least 30% of a project success in any field. So I'm going to dive deeper into the nuances in this section so that those with the competency to assess design talent, and particularly system design talent, can measure my strength in this area. It is a strength that is unrecognized for three core reasons in a majority of cases. First of all, system design is a talent that less than 2% of the population have. And as the author of The Black Swan points out in his voluminous research, only those highly competent in a given field are capable of assessing the competency of others in that field. And unfortunately, though it is profoundly important in all aspects of our culture, our education system systematically avoids teaching students system designs, in part because one of the most obvious things to reform at a systemic level is the institutionalized education system. Another is that I have complex PTSD. It's one of the reasons I put a lot of attention on the systems that create trauma and the systems that may possibly resolve trauma, which leads me to prize relaxation and daily freedoms over the stresses that come from making a big impact, which always rocks existing power structures. Now, the reason is that I'm not ambitious in any other area in terms of money, power, etc. That doesn't correlate to visions and impulses around sustainable human well-being. These being the things that are measured is something on a Fortune 500 list, as opposed to what about the 500 kindness list. You see, there is no list on the 500 kindest people. There are no lists of the 100 most sustainable and ecological paradigms. There is no list on the most generous and healthy individuals in the world. We, in a capitalist framework, measure money. So these are very obvious reasons why a design talent that lies latent or is being expressed in small ways in this child, in this teenager, in this adult, etc., is not going to be on our cultural radar because we don't know what to measure, going back to the definition of intelligence. The first example of system design is choosing a career and designing a successful business. This was undertaking I began at age 14 with Think and Grow Rich, in which Napoleon Hill outlines a decision-making process, as well as the importance of working with mentors. Putting relationships first. Deep romantic relationships emerged as the best return on my investments in 3 areas: most enjoyable time, highest levels of growth, highest levels of health, as long as the relationship was conducted in a certain way. Noticing that 95% of my business relationships were clear, win-win, and conflict-free, I leveraged design talent and clear agreements to create similar levels of clarity with willing partners. The willing partners being much harder to find than to design an effective system. After experimentation, I find that slow mornings, writing, making love, and cooking with a partner are key to a great day and strong bond. So I shifted my work schedule to accommodate that. 4 hours of work every day, 4 hours to involve in creative projects such as this, which doesn't make any money, and 4 hours of investment in my relationship feels about right. So I've adjusted my daily routine to prioritize that. Most relationships end for reasons other than death. And most relationships end for reasons other than death, so I have a clearly defined ending agreement with my wife should either of us have a healthy reason to go our separate ways. These ending agreements, which I've had with the majority of my lovers throughout my relationship experience, have turned what are normally some of the most painful and frustrating experiences in life into deeply healing and fulfilling growth opportunities. Ideas, ideas, ideas. I recognized early on that I would have enough ideas to literally live 1,000 lifetimes, probably more. I write ideas down in an idea log and let go of 99% of them. I look for about 1% of my ideas that meet a set of clear criteria and then take immediate action. This has led to achieving literally thousands of goals and succeeding in areas that are important. People are more important than money. I recognize that in a capitalistic framework, the game is to turn people and things and time into money. However, this is not my game. My game is to turn time, resources, and intention into human well-being, which often costs money, money which I enjoy spending. I donate significant energy towards this goal and will put money second after I make a comfortable lifestyle every year with no debt. For me, that's around $100,000 a year. And right now, I need to work 2 to 4 hours a day, 6 months of the year to generate the 100,000. And then I'm free to play my own game, which is helping people. 10x thinking. One of my favorite ways to design is with the question, how can people create 1,000% more well-being per unit of energy invested? This guides my ventures in nonprofit. I'm excited to develop new technologies, science, and strategy for both creating and measuring sustainable human well-being. Paradigm upgrades. One of the most important things in shaping our lives is our paradigm. Every quest begins with a question. The quest for a scientific, reproducible creation of 1,000% more sustainable human well-being per unit of energy invested is a worthwhile quest. Continuous synergistic learning. My Audible library has roughly 500 books, which I explore 1 to 4 hours daily in unabridged audio media. There is a mix of anomalous data from minority paradigms, including the occult, including Rupert Sheldrake's explorations of science and the science dilemma, including mysticism, including anything that is considered anomalous, because this is what helps a paradigm to grow. You need to refine models of thought to include data from more and more sources. There is a mix of business and psychology and health and architecture and design. I try and act, and usually do, on 4% of what I learn. This averages out to taking 2 noticeable and sometimes many small steps based on every book that I read. I'm interested most of all whether I'm reading Ray Kurzweil's work on singularity, or the rejection cycle of how 200 companies managed to reject Google before a single one would give them the time of day, only to find out that they're among the most profitable companies in the entire world. What I'm interested in is taking the patterns revealed by these books about our culture and cross-pollinating them to create more effective designs. Multiple levels of innovation combined with chaotic scientific experimentation. We're going to be an interplanetary species in the next 30 years, courtesy Elon Musk and others. We don't have a culture to export that is sustainable, meaning when you're in a little glass pod, and they did experiments on Biosphere 2, to try and replicate, what you find is that the neglected human element, meaning we don't teach human sciences in school, so we don't teach people how to resolve an argument effectively. We don't teach people how to grow love effectively. We don't teach people how to heal broken trust effectively, and so we don't. And what we found on Biosphere 2 is that it was the human element, breaking the group into factions, competing, etc., public relations scandal. It was the human element that threatens our ability to export our species to another planet. And so what we need before spending more than $1 trillion on the endeavor is to actually have a technology of interacting with other people that's worthy of export. Meaning we're not going to throw $1 trillion down the drain simply because one person couldn't keep their temper and blew a gun hole through the biosphere. We need 100 to 1,000 times more micro-experimentation, scientifically recorded, to create a culture worthy of export that is sustainable and reliable about its goal to create massive amounts of sustainable human well-being. I'm interested in the quest of 10x at every level. What would a 10x nonprofit look like that brings 1,000% more well-being per dollar invested than any other nonprofit operating today? I'm interested in the quest for 10x at every level. What would a 10x nonprofit look like that brings 1,000% more well-being per dollar invested than any nonprofit operating today? Can nonprofit be 10 times more fun than the guilt-tripping moaning and groaning that currently goes on in a lot of nonprofit? Can a core profit center business within the framework of a nonprofit make being nonprofit profitable and thus self-sustaining? In other words, amongst the various projects and technologies developed within the nonprofit to create a business that generates the money for the nonprofit, making it significantly more potent. What is the most what is the most well-being an app can possibly generate, and how would it be designed? Can blockchain biometrically accessed apps lead to new form of government and public power that is referenced to a scientifically based algorithm for making effective decisions? What does peak lifestyle look like in a paradigm of full spectrum well-being that includes emotions, energy level, and quality relationships? I think these are great questions. Design, innovation, and sharing. I've never fit well into committees or worked for someone else a day in my life. I do not want to own or hoard thoughts, technologies, or movements. My goal is therefore to pollinate, develop, cross-reference, and experiment, providing data freely to others. I believe that over time this will dramatically allow me to have more influence than trying to fit into committees and teams, which are not my strengths. You can be a part of this by sharing time, thoughts, love, encouragement, money, spaces, and political influence. You can be a part of drawing attention to these quests, the quests that come from these questions. Thank you for your support and for taking a few moments to get to know me.